Today, I would like to share with you an example from the Manhattan LSAT book. It has many exercises from the 10 real SATs. I'm going to go through how to work one of any of these questions in the logical reasoning section. The questions are very similar from the GMAT to the LSAT. Across the board, they're fantastic because it makes you think, not just react on gut instinct on why something is more rational than another thing. Okay? So, we will start on page 111. I literally laughed out loud when I read this question because it's really funny. Okay, so this is the first question. It's from Prep Test 41, Section 1. I'll give you the question and then I'll teach you how I got a 99th percentile score on the verbal section of the GMAT, which has a lot of these types of questions in it. Question number 1. Because the statement, all grey rabbits are rabbits, is true, it follows by analogy that the statement, all suspected criminals are criminals, is also true. Now we know why that sounds very strange, because we know for a fact, well, all suspected criminals are obviously not all criminals. However, using the logic stated, it seems like it ought to be true. Okay, so then what is wrong with that line of reasoning? Okay? What is wrong with that line of reasoning and its use of analogies? Okay, and here's the question. Okay, here is question number 1 right here. Okay, and I'll repeat it once. Because the statement, all grey rabbits are rabbits, is true, it follows by analogy that the statement, all suspected criminals are criminals, is also true. Okay. We'll start first with how I learned to work these questions. Okay? To advance any type of conclusion, we need support. Okay? So there are very simple components of any argument made in the logical reasoning section. You have your premises, which are the support, the data, the support, whatever facts that you have. Okay? What are the premises? Then you end with a conclusion. Okay? You have to be able to identify that conclusion. And in this question, the conclusion is all suspected criminals are criminals. Okay? That's the conclusion. How does it argue this? Okay? It's using all grey rabbits are rabbits as a support. Okay? And there's a connector between your support here and your conclusion here. Okay? You can think about the conclusion to be a table, okay? And the premises to be the support or the legs, okay? Some sort of platform, which is your conclusion, and these things called premises supporting your conclusion, okay? However, it doesn't just hold. These sticks don't hold a platform. You need some sort of glue, some sort of nail, some sort of thing that interfaces between the premises to support the conclusion. So from the premises to the conclusion, there's something missing here in the middle. Okay, what are those somethings called? They're called assumptions. Okay, what are the assumptions that makes the conclusion valid given the premises or support? So here, what's the assumption? The assumption is that one analogy can be used to parallel another, okay? So they're saying all gray rabbits are rabbits. It follows by analogy that then all suspected criminals are criminals. We don't even need to put people through the court system anymore. It will get very cheap in the immediate run, but it will get very expensive in the long run. Now, anyone can say that's obviously BS. But the logical reasoning questions force you to analyze exactly where it goes wrong. Okay? Where does it go wrong? All gray rabbits are rabbits. Okay, that we know intuitively as being true. And here is where I would like to introduce to you using Venn diagrams, okay? I can draw a circle and say, here is the domain of rabbits. Within all this are rabbits, okay? Now, if I draw a circle within it saying gray rabbits, okay? Certainly and surely, if you had gray rabbits, you can fit it in the circle because we know gray rabbits are still rabbits, okay? Are white rabbits still rabbits? Yes. Okay, so white rabbits also go here. Now, using this technique, we can then ask the question, okay? Are these two parallel analogies if we extrapolated this to suspected criminals and criminals? So, the larger circle is rabbits. So the next larger circle are what? Right, criminals. Okay, criminals right here. However, can we draw a circle and put suspected criminals in the criminal circle? Does this make sense? No. Suspected criminals are not criminals. So this is where it goes wrong. Suspected criminals are not criminals. They don't belong in the domain of criminals. Okay, whereas gray rabbits do belong in the domain of rabbits. And we can further go through the thought exercise. Well, then what would be good examples to put in here? Well, thieves, right? Convicted thieves are certainly within the domain of criminals. Murders would go in there, rapists would go in there, okay? These would make sense. But suspected criminal does not belong there, okay? So now that we've done the thought exercises, we can go back to the question, okay? The question asks, the reasoning above is flawed because it fails to recognize that A, the relationship between a criminal and being a rabbit is not the same kind as that being suspected and being gray. First, we have to ask, given the facts, is that true? Is it true that the relationship between being a criminal and being a rabbit is not the same kind as that between being suspected and being gray? Sure, okay, we can say yes to that. But is it relevant? It's not the best. So unless all the other answers are atrocious, this one will kind of just mark it as question mark, okay? Now we go to B. The relationship between being suspected and being a rabbit is not the same kind as that between being gray and being a criminal. Now here is where we start thinking, okay, you know what, maybe we should map this out, okay? Gray rabbits, colon, rabbits, okay? And then the suspected criminals, and then colon, criminals, okay? This is how we would write it, okay? So the first one says the relationship between being a criminal and being a rabbit. Where are we, okay? Between being a criminal and being a rabbit. At least they're on the same side of the analogy, right? For B, the relationship between being suspected and being a rabbit. You see, being suspected here and being a rabbit here, it doesn't even match. Okay, so that can completely be eliminated. Okay. So B, we absolutely cross out. And usually when I take the exam, I write this. Okay, and I'll make notes because you get scratch paper. I would say A, I would just write question mark. B, I would just cross out. Okay, next. C. C states the relationship between being a gray rabbit and being a rabbit is not the same kind as that between being a suspected criminal and being a criminal. That sounds like it makes the most sense. The relationship between being a gray rabbit and being a rabbit, okay, is not the same kind of relationship as being a suspected criminal and a criminal, which is exactly what we have drawn in these diagrams. However, we have to finish reading the question, the rest of the question, which are the answers, right? We have to finish reading the answers. D says, not all rabbits are gray. Is that relevant to the question at hand? No, it's not relevant. We don't care. It's not what the question is asking. Okay? And then E, not all criminals are suspected. And you're saying, is that even true? Let alone relevant? The answer is no to both. Okay, so that's completely out. So we know the answer is C because D is not relevant and E is irrelevant, and it's really not all criminals are suspected. Well, actually, they were. So if you were a convicted criminal, at some point in time, you had to be suspected, right? You had to be a suspected criminal in order to move along to when the jury deliberates and then you received some sort of judgment. So all criminals were suspected at some point in time. Okay? Now, this really amused me, but this type of foundation is absolutely crucial to people who have opposing views. Having a productive debate where they can make progress and know what's better for the world. And this is the reason why I love standardized exams. I think it teaches young people, even older people like myself, foundational ways of thinking with just the right amount of structure, so you have people playing a game that is fair and have the same rules. So if you have no rules when you're debating with someone, it turns into a fight. And usually that fight turns into something that is completely not productive. Okay? So as a society, we need standardization of communications. And this is what provides our foundational rules that everyone ought to play by, because otherwise it becomes too chaotic.